Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin, and for today's video we are going to be doing my 2023 reading wrap-up. We're going to go through all the books that I read in 2023. But before we get started on that, I want to wish everybody a happy new year. It has been quite a minute since I have been on my channel because I have just been really busy with traveling, and then spring semester started. I literally got back to the States like a week ago, so I'm still kind of getting back into the swing of everything for the new year and the new semester. But I'm really excited to be filming this video because I feel like overall 2023 was a good reading year for me. It didn't start off so great, but once I got the ball rolling, I had a lot of really great reads this previous year, and I'm really excited to share them with you guys. I'm gonna try and keep this video as concise as possible because you guys know I like to ramble. I like to talk way too much, but I don't want this video to be 5 hours long, so I'm going to try and do short reviews on these books. But a lot of the books that I will be talking about, I have done reading vlogs on my channel, or I've included them in like reading wrap-ups or things like that. So if you want more in-depth reviews and kind of my thoughts, opinions, and reactions of these books, definitely go check out those videos. I will link them down below as well if you're interested in kind of getting more of that in-depth review on the books. Without further ado, because we have a lot of books to get through, we're gonna get started on the reviews for all of the books I read in 2023. So in total for the year, I read a total of 30 books. About half of these books were on Kindle Unlimited, and then the other half of the books I read physical copies of, and then I read one audiobook this year, which I definitely want to read more audiobooks in 2024. But we're gonna start off with the first book I read this year, which I will say it did take me 3 months to read. I started this book December of 2022 and I didn't finish it until March of 2023, and it has nothing to do with the book. It had everything to do with me just being overwhelmed and frustrated with my spring semester of school, and I did not want to pick up a book and read. But I will tell you that this book was hands down my favorite book of 2023. I love this book, I love this series, and that is none other than Bloodmark by Tracy Deonn. This is the second book in the Legendborn Cycle series, and I love Legendborn so much. I love these characters, I love this story, I love this plot, I love this world, I love everything about this book. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It definitely, like I said, was the highlight of my year. I love Brie Matthews, and I just love the way her character has just evolved into such a strong woman and such a strong young girl, and I feel like she is just being told by so many people, especially in this book, what to do with her life. And I'm so excited to see where she's going to end up and the decisions that she's going to choose and where her character is going to go in the next 2 books, because now we're getting 4 books instead of 3 books, and I'm so excited. The next book though in the series doesn't come out till 2025, so I'm a little bit hurt, but I know it's going to be amazing, and I absolutely love this book, and I think this was a great start for 2023. And then the next book I read was actually on my Kindle, or the next like 3 books I read were actually on my Kindle. I have Kindle Unlimited, and I will say if there's one thing that you should get in 2024 if you have a Kindle, is Kindle Unlimited, especially if you love reading romances. I read A Long Time Coming by Megan Quinn. I gave that book 5 stars. It is the 3rd book in the Kane Brothers series, and it is a friends to lovers. Our main character, Brecker, is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved him in this book. He's like the sweet and soft one out of all the 3 brothers. I felt like he fell very hard. He fell first, and he just loved our main character so much, and she was just such like a bundle of joy as well to read. I felt like they had a really great chemistry. I love the pacing of the book. I don't think there was really a 3rd act breakup, and it was very low angst in my opinion. Anyways, it was just such a joy to read. I absolutely loved it, and I was like, I love this book so much, I'm going to read another book in the Kane Brothers series, and I ended up reading So Not Meant to Be by Megan Quinn. This is the 2nd book in the Kane Brothers series, and it follows JP. This one is more enemies to lovers, and JP is definitely more of the fun, jokester type of brother. I will say, I think he's the one that doesn't love being in the family business as much. So the Kane Brothers follows these 3 brothers. They're billionaires. They have this really big multi-billionaire company, and JP is definitely, I think, the one that doesn't really want to be as involved in it as much, but he's kind of like the face, the personality, the marketing strategy. Like, he's the one that everybody wants to talk to, and you get to see that vulnerability side of him come out in this book a lot, which I really loved. I gave this book 4 stars. And then I read another book by Megan Quinn because I was like, she has just been getting hit after hit after hit, and I was like, let me just read another book by her because I know it's probably going to be one that I'm going to enjoy. So I went and read Untying the Knot by Megan Quinn, and I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I could not stand this book. I hated this book with a burning passion. I don't remember the characters' names. Honestly, not very important to remember their names, but this is a book about a marriage on the rocks. The female main character wants to have a divorce because she feels like she is just not being seen, not being heard in her marriage, and the male main character is like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? Like, where's this coming from? Like, what did I do wrong? But the problem with this book is that the female main character refuses to communicate anything, refuses to open her mouth and just tell him what's wrong. And it's so frustrating because it's like, if you would just sit down and have one conversation, all of this would have been avoided. I understand miscommunication trope is not for everybody, but this was miscommunication on crack. Like, it was just ridiculous how badly they could not communicate with each other. I did not like the plot of this book. I did not like the pacing of this book. I did not like the characters. I really despise the female main character. The male main character had no backbone. I felt like he was being run all over, and it was like, dude, stand up for yourself. Like, stand up for 1 second. Like, I know you want to fight for your marriage, but you also need to have some self-respect. 2 out of 5 stars. So after that, I was like, you know what? I read 3 romances back to back, and I was like, I need a break from romances. So I ended up picking up a literary fiction book, which is The Death of Vivic OG by Akweke Emezi, and this is the first book that I have read by this author, and it is definitely not going to be my last. I loved this book so much. This book follows Vivic OG and the people that are closest to him and kind of all the events that led up to his death. And the writing in this book is so immaculate. It is so vulnerable. It like punctures your heart, and it really makes you sit with everything that the author is saying, the author is conveying. And I just absolutely ate this book up. Like, it was so good. It's so short too, so it's definitely one that you can read fairly quickly. But when I tell you that the lasting effect that this book will have on you is deep. It's so important, and it just impacted me so emotionally as a reader and as a person, and I just want to read so much more books by this author. And I know that they have another book coming out this year, which I'm definitely excited to read, but this was definitely a highlight of the 2023 year for me, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then the next book I read was Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. If you know one thing about me, I love Talia Hibbert. The Brown Sisters trilogy is one of my favorite romance trilogies out there. Talia Hibbert writes romance like nobody I have ever seen. Like, she is the romance queen, romance guru. Like, everybody should take notes from Miss Talia Hibbert. Like, she does such a good job writing romances, and this was her YA romance debut. So I was really excited to read this, kind of reading more younger characters and kind of seeing how she's going to tackle this. And she did such a great job. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Our 2 main characters, Celine and Bradley, are so perfect for each other. They're so cute. They're so adorable. They used to be best friends, and then in high school they kind of went their separate ways, kind of became a little I guess more enemies than friends. However, they have to work together for this like woodsy retreat that they're doing to win a scholarship, I believe, or to be part of this program that they want to be a part of. And seeing them work together and kind of, you know, figure out like what went wrong in their friendship and rebuild their friendship, but also, you know, sparks are flying, so they're building this like romantic relationship as well, was so awesome to see. And I was just giggling and smiling, and these characters are so amazing, and Bradley is incredible. He's so mature for his age, which I love, and Celine is such a badass, and I just really enjoyed reading this book. It's super cute. I will say February is coming up, and if you're looking for a cute romance to read in February, this is definitely the book for you. And then I read probably my most not my most highly anticipated book for that year, but a book that I was so scared to read, but so excited to read this year because I needed to just finish it off, and that is Nightfall by Penelope Douglas, as well as Fire Night by Penelope Douglas. So I read these books on Kindle Unlimited. These are the last 2 books in the Devil's Night series. It is a dark romance, and it follows the 4 horsemen. They went to jail, they came back trying to figure out why they went to jail, tormented the girl that they believed put them in jail, and each of the books followed 4 horsemen and their love interest. And we finally got to Will's book, which is Nightfall. And I was so excited to read his book because Will was a character that I felt like just didn't get a lot of screen time in the other books, but he had such a big presence, in my opinion, in the other books. Like, his personality was so big, and I was so excited to really delve into his character and delve into more of his backstory. However, I just felt like when I was reading Will's book, I just wasn't getting Will. It felt like a very different character for me. I really didn't like the plot that we were following and his love interest. I didn't really feel the connection between the 2 characters. Penelope Douglas's books in the Devil's Night series follow past and present tense for both of the characters, and I will say I felt more chemistry in their past tense than I did in their present tense, which is frustrating because you want them to be together now, not, you know, years in the past. But overall, I gave this book, Nightfall, 3 out of 5 stars. I felt like it was okay, but it definitely was a disappointment for me in 2023. And then I gave Fire Night, which is a novella, and that follows kind of the children of the 4 horsemen and their love interests, which is very interesting, and it definitely kind of sets up for a potential spin-off if that's something that Penelope wants to do. And I gave that novella 3 out of 5 stars as well. And then the next book I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I am so excited that I read this book because I actually started reading this book in 2022, and I DNF'd it because I just couldn't get into it, and I was like, I'll get to it later. Emily Henry is definitely an author that writes romance in such a great way. I love the way she writes romance. She writes romances that are not solely just focused on this love story between these 2 characters, but definitely puts energy and thought into the characters as individual people as well. And her characters just feel so whole when you read them, like they have whole lives and they're not just here for the purpose of a love story. And that's exactly how I felt with Book Lovers. I absolutely love this book. This book follows our main character Nora and her love interest Charlie, and Nora is trying to figure out her life, especially because she kind of went through parentification of a child. So after her mom died, I believe she kind of had to take on that parent role, caring for her sister, and she's trying to figure out her life and everything like that. And she meets Charlie because they both work together in like the publishing world, and their connection is just absolutely fantastic. And I just love the relationship that Nora has with her sister. I absolutely just loved her journey that she goes on throughout the book. Also, Charlie Lastra, 10 out of 10 book boyfriend, 10 out of 10 book boyfriend. Like, I love him so much. Everything about him was just absolutely amazing. I felt like they were perfect for each other. The ending was beautiful. I just love this book so much. It made me just feel so good inside, and I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's amazing. Definitely one of my favorites from Emily Henry. And then the next book I read was also a book on Kindle Unlimited. I told you guys, I'm a Kindle Unlimited girly. I'd be reading all these books on this app. And this book I read was Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Leese, I believe is her name. And I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. The beginning was very odd. I felt like the book started off pretty weird with how like the couple met and kind of how their story kind of began. I believe that the female main character's sister or friend was trying to set her up with her fiance's friend, and they were both trying to put them together because I guess they thought that they should be together. I really don't know. And then the two characters found out that they were being set up, and they're like, you know what, we're gonna pretend to date and get back at them because we're gonna tell them that, hey, stay out of our lives. I don't know, it didn't really make a lot of sense. I was kind of like, this is a weird setup for this love story, but I'm going with the flow. And then 70 pages in, I was like, wait a minute, I'm digging this. These characters have so much chemistry, it's off the charts. Like, it was so good, the chemistry that they had. I felt like they were very different people personality-wise, but every single scene they had together was so good. I felt like we got the vulnerability, we got the spice, we just got everything that makes a really great romance, and I was digging it. Up until the third act breakup. And I am not one to hate third act breakups. Like, if you do a third act breakup, I'm cool, I'm fine. Like, give me some conflict. We need conflict in our lives, right? However, this third act breakup was so fucking ridiculous, excuse my language, but it was really ridiculous that I was like, you know what? I'm dropping a star. I would have given this book 4 out of 5 stars, probably more of a 4-star. Ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because the third act breakup was atrocious. I hated it. It was so bad. I felt like it just did not feel natural to these characters at all, and it really frustrated me. So yeah, that's how I felt about this book. But overall, I think it's a decent book. And then the next book or books that I read were the books in the Magnolia Parks series, Magnolia Parks universe. I have a whole reading vlog where I read all of these books and I gave you guys my thoughts, my opinions, my reactions. It's very, very in-depth. So if you are interested in knowing more about how I feel about this series, definitely go check out that video. I thoroughly enjoyed Magnolia Parks universe. I enjoyed these books. I felt like the very first book, Magnolia Parks, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I felt like it was a solid foundation for the rest of the series, and I felt like I was kind of getting used to Jessa Hastings' writing and her characters. I really didn't know where the story was gonna go, but I was definitely interested enough to keep going. So I gave the first book 3 out of 5 stars. I gave the second book, which is Daisy Hates, 4 out of 5 stars. I gave the fourth book, which is Magnolia Parks: A Long Way Home, 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like a lot of the reasons that the characters in Magnolia Parks are the way they are, especially Magnolia and BJ, is explained in this book, and I really appreciated the explanation because I was very frustrated with a lot of them, aka BJ. And then I gave the fourth book in the series, Daisy Hates, The Great Undoing, 5 out of 5 stars. This is my favorite book in the Magnolia Parks universe thus far. I love this book. I cried. It broke my heart. If you've watched the video, you know, but I adored Magnolia Parks series. If you are looking for something that is dramatic, if you're looking for something that deals with very complicated characters, with complicated lives and complicated stories, then I think this is a perfect story for you. So after reading The Great Undoing of Daisy Hates, I was like, I can't read anything that's going to make me cry. I don't want to read anything emotional. I don't want to read anything that's too much. So I picked up Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I felt like it was very, very cute. One of those simple romances that are very short, very cute, not super memorable in my opinion, but definitely something that if you read something that was super heavy before is the perfect book to kind of pick you back up. It's the second book following When in Rome by Sarah Adams, and it follows the bodyguard of the female main character in that book and her love interest's sister. So it's very interesting. Only thing I didn't love about this book was the town that these two characters were in were very much in their business, and it was kind of cute, but kind of like, these are adults, like relax, like they can be together. Like the town was like, you don't need to be with this bodyguard. He's such a bad person. Like he's such like a fuckboy, and she's like our pretty princess. Like she can't be hurt. Like we have to protect her. And I was just like, she's a grown woman. Relax. But I thought it was cute overall. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And then And then I read my most anticipated release for 2023, and that is Unravel Me by Becca Mack. This is the third book in the Playing for Keeps series, and it follows Adam Lockwood and his love interest. And if you are a fan of Playing for Keeps, so Consider Me, Play With Me by Becca Mack, you know that Adam is like everyone's favorite, so we were all anticipating for his book. And when I tell you that this book did not disappoint, it did not disappoint. This book is amazing. I love Adam, I love Rosie, I love their chemistry, I love their stories. Again, the found family trope in this book and the connection between all of the players, because it is a hockey romance as well, the connection between all of the players is just so amazing. It's one of my favorite things about this entire series, and I just felt so in love with this book and these characters and this story. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. So after that, I had read my cute little romances. So now we're gonna get into, I feel like, my era of reading like books out of my comfort zone. So we started off reading A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and I picked this book up because I wanted to kind of prep myself for reading a lot of like thrillers and mysteries and horror novels for spooky season, which actually never really happened, but we'll get into that later. I'm so happy that I picked up A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This is a YA murder mystery. It follows our main character, Pip. She is a high school senior, and part of her senior capstone project is she is going to kind of reopen a murder where she believes that the person that everybody believes to be culprit of the murder is not actually the person who really did it. So she kind of dives into it and kind of opens up that whole thing again, and Pip is a badass. I will say Pip is a badass. She was giving me heart palpitations because I was like, Pip, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this. And what does she do? She does that. And honestly, I love her for it because she kept this book so interesting. I love the pacing of this book. If you're looking for something fast paced but is going to keep you at the edge of your seat, I think this is the perfect book for you. If you're someone like me who gets very nervous from reading like mysteries and like especially murder mysteries, anything that's spooky or creepy or anything like that, I think this is a great book to start off with. Great plot development, great characters. So excited to continue reading the rest of the books in the series. Love it. And then after reading A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I picked up Ace of Spades, and honestly, I was so excited to read this book. This book had been on my bookshelf for the longest time. The way people have talked about this book, I was like, I'm so excited to read this book. I thought it was going to be like a highlight for the year for me, and I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. I felt like the premise of the book, the plot, the setup of this book was so amazing, and then when we got to the, I guess, major plot reveal, everything kind of fell flat for me. I felt like the direction that the author took following that like major plot reveal, I felt like shouldn't have been the direction that she took, but again, that's just my personal opinion. I also felt like our two main characters, they are the only 2 Black students in this all-white school, and they have to kind of work together because they're both being targeted by this one person. And you would think that a friendship or something would kind of come from that, but it really didn't. I felt like these 2 characters, they were forced to work together and forced to be around each other. And even towards the end, there's this idea that they are actually friends, but I just didn't feel that from these characters. I felt like they were very distinct individual people, and I liked them on their own, but whenever they were together, I was kind of pulled out of the story because I just didn't feel the friendship, and I didn't really feel the bond that I personally believe that they should have had given the nature of the book and what was going on, especially with them allegedly having a friendship at the end. Overall, I was a little bit disappointed in this book, and however, I will say it did freak me out. It did give me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. And then following Ace of Spades, I read Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonin Young. This is another one of those books where it's a very cute romance, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. The book was fine, but I just didn't love the romance aspect so much. I felt like the couple in this book was giving more friendship than giving relationship, romance, couple, which obviously is necessary for romance. I felt like they had a really good friendship and a really good foundation for a relationship. However, this book also has the accidental pregnancy trope, and I feel like if it wasn't for the fact that they were having a baby together, I don't think they would be together. So the next book I read was Behind the Net by Stephanie Archer, and this was a flop. This was a major flop. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. It is a hockey romance, and that is honestly the only thing I really remember from this book. The male main character in this book was atrocious. He was very aggressive, and everything about this book, from the female main character to the male main character, was so sexually charged. Like, there was no actual relationship, I felt like, as far as like, why do you like this person other than the fact that you are sexually attracted to them? What else is there to this relationship other than that aspect? Nothing. It was really uncomfortable to read this book a lot of the times. I did not like the male main character at all. The female main character, can't remember a single thing about her. This book was just not it. It was just not it. Following that, I read 2 back-to-back romances that were just not really hitting. So I was like, you know what? I think it's a sign to take a break from romances. I ended up picking up Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Saw this book everywhere in 2023. Everybody and their mother was reading this book in 2023. So obviously I had to read this book in 2023 and I'm so happy I did. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I love the writing in this book so much. It's the first book I've read by this author and definitely not my last. I love the storyline. I love the satire. I low-key felt like, especially towards the end, this book is definitely more of like literary fiction. However, the end of the book was starting to feel like a mystery and horror novel. And honestly, if this was a mystery and horror novel, I would not be surprised because it was definitely giving off those vibes, especially towards the end. Follows our main character. I don't really remember her name. Her name is June Hayward, and one of her close friends, Athena, passes away and she steals her manuscript and passes it on as her own, and she allegedly pretends to be an Asian American woman, and it talks a lot about that aspect of the story and that aspect of the book and also kind of the publishing industry, and it talks a little bit about classism and things like that. It's just a lot of different commentary going on throughout this book, and I always find it so interesting listening to people's thoughts about this book because a lot of people have different and like mixed reviews about this book as well. So I don't know, I really enjoyed it. And then the next book I read was The Regrets by Amy Bonifant, and this book I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. It was very odd and it was very strange. I felt like this book was like a fever dream. I remember reading it, but I also don't remember reading it. It's like a ghost romance, literary fiction. I don't really know what genre this book really falls under, if I'm being completely honest. So this follows our 2 main characters, Thomas and Rachel. Thomas is a ghost. However, he still has his physical body as a human, at least in the beginning of the book. He has to kind of stay in this limbo state between being alive and being fully dead for a reason that you will come to find out. He cannot really build any connection with the human. Like, he's really not supposed to interact with people, kind of just supposed to live out these last couple of days in this limbo state, kind of on his own, not trying to interact with anybody, not trying to build any relationships with people. If he does break that rule, he will inquire these regrets or these consequences. And obviously he does that because he meets Rachel, and Rachel has her own stuff going on. She is a mess. And they obviously start to build this relationship, and it is very, very fascinating because these 2 characters are very, very strange people. And the romance aspect of this book doesn't really feel like a romance. It really feels like everything is fueled by lust, and it feels like these characters are like using each other. And towards the end of the book, things just got really, really strange, and I felt like there were certain plot moments and like plot points that were just not talked about and not brought up again, and it just didn't feel very full circle in my opinion. It's just like one of those books that you read and you just kind of squint while you're reading it. You're just like, what exactly am I reading? But it was very interesting. Like, it was very, very interesting. So I mean, I would recommend it. 3 out of 5 stars. I would recommend it if you are any at all interested in like a ghost romance at all. I think this is definitely an interesting one to read. I am burning up. I'm trying to keep on this cardigan for like, you know, the sake of the look, but I'm sweating. The next book I read following that was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I love this book. This book brought me so much joy, especially in the time that I read it, because I was in the thick of fall semester, and this book just brought me so much joy and happiness, and I absolutely loved it. It is a magical realism story. It is also a romance story. It follows our female main character whose aunt passed away, and she moves into her late aunt's apartment, and her apartment is magical because she meets a man there who lives 7 years in the past, and she is 7 years in his future, and they immediately just have the best chemistry right off the bat. As you go on through the story and you go on through the journey, you meet more of the characters and you kind of understand more about these 2 characters that this book focuses on. It's just such an incredible story. I loved it so much. It made me cry. These subtle things that are in this book is also what just makes the book. The nickname that he calls her, there's a scene where she meets his friends at a food truck, and I love that scene so much. I don't know, there's just so many little things in this book that add up. It makes my heart warm. I love this book so much. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely a highlight for me for 2023. Okay, I'm sorry guys. I'm burning up. I'm hot. Whew. Next book I read was Collide by Bal Cabra. This was also on my Kindle, through Kindle Unlimited, a hockey romance. Again, 3 out of 5 stars. It was fine. It was okay, just not very memorable in my opinion. I felt like the storyline just felt flat. I felt like there was an obvious introduction to why the characters, our 2 main characters, had to be together and like why they had to work together, because they were working to kind of get something out of each other. And I feel like that was just forgotten as the book went on. And something I want to point out is this book has the trope like boy falls first and like he falls hard and he falls first. And I love it, and I love boy obsessed and everything like that, where the guy is just like in love with the girl. But I just don't appreciate when the girl knows that, and I just feel like she's kind of mean to him and kind of dismissive of his feelings. It kind of just plays games with him. And that's how I felt when I was reading this book. And I just was like, girl, stop playing these games. Like, we don't have to do this. Anyways, just not my favorite. The next book I read was a fantasy. And at this point in the year, because now we're in like October, November, at this point in the year, I had quickly realized I have not read a fantasy novel since Bloodmarked. And I was like, that's not okay. That is not okay. So I was like, I need to pick up a fantasy very, very quickly. And this had been on my bookshelf for a really long time. And I was like, I need to read this. So I picked up Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. And let me preface by saying this. When I read fantasies, especially first books in fantasy novels, I have learned to realize that I sometimes have to give some leeway, because you are setting up a world and you are setting up characters, you are setting up a lot of things in your first book in a fantasy series. So even though I didn't love this book, because I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, I felt like it was a good setup for the rest of the series, hopefully. This book is about a witch. She has a sister who is also a witch. They are noticing that witches are kind of disappearing and getting murdered in their town. And one day she finds her sister's body and she's very upset. She's like, who did this? Who did this? Who did this? And in order to kind of figure out who did this, she calls upon one of the princes of hell. His name is Prince of Wrath, and each of the princes of hell are named after one of the 7 deadly sins. So she calls Prince of Wrath. He's also like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why witches are being killed. So they're going to be working together to kind of figure out what's going on with these witches and everything like that. And it's very, very interesting, right? I just felt like there was a lot about witches being talked about, but there was not much witch stuff happening. I also felt like Amelia, who is our female main character, the witch that we are following, she is just not the strong queen that she thinks she is. Like, it was always like moments where she could really use her powers and she was just like, I don't know what spell to use. I was like, girl, what? Like, what is happening? I was so frustrated with her. I was like, girl, be for real. I will say the tension between Wrath and Amelia was, whew, it was loud. It was loud, okay? It was very, very loud, and I'm very, very excited, especially with how this book ends, to read the next book in the series. I also just felt like when I was reading this book, I felt like I was being edged the entire time because I was just waiting for something to happen. I felt like we were going to get something and then it just went away. And then we were gonna get something and then it just went away. And I was like, okay, what is the point? Where are we going with this? Where are we going with this? But like I said, I think it was a solid foundation to set up the rest of the series. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to get into this world. And then after reading Kingdom of the Wicked, this was when I was supposed to start reading my like thrillers and mysteries and everything for spooky season. And I started filming a video, and the video just never saw the light of day because I only read 1 book. And after I read this book, I was like, I think this is it for me. And that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now, I am a Colleen Hoover stan. Colleen Hoover is a hit or miss for me. Like, she has some of my favorite books that I've rated 5 out of 5 stars, and she's also written some of my least favorite books that I've rated 2 and 1 stars. And unfortunately, this falls under my least favorite books by Miss Colleen Hoover. This book was very, very disturbing. I hated so much of this book. I was reading this book and I was just jaw open, jaw down, eyes wide. I was like, this cannot actually be happening. Like, this cannot be what I'm actually reading. What the hell is going on here? That is my thought process. Like, the reactions that I had while I was reading this book, it was insane. I almost threw this book across the room because I was like, at what point is too much? At what point do we cross the line? You know what I mean? And I felt like Miss Colleen crossed it a couple times. So I wanted to read this book because it's a book that's different than anything she's written before. And so many people have talked about this book and people are always like, team manuscript, team letter. And I'm like, I want to know what they're talking about. I want to add to the discussion. And after reading this book, I fear the question we should be asking is not team manuscript or team letter. It's why. It's why. This book is so disturbing. I felt very uncomfortable reading it. It's crazy. And then the romance that's embedded throughout the story is so odd and unnecessary, and even just made me more uncomfortable. I have the heebie-jeebies after reading this. After I read Verity, I was like, I think I'm done with, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I'm done with spooky season. I'm done with reading horror novels. I'm just gonna go back and read a fantasy. So that's exactly what I read. I read Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the prequel series to the From Blood and Ash series and the From Blood and Ash books. This is part of a separate series. I listened to this book on audiobook, and it was such an incredible experience because it was the first book where I had listened to the audio version instead of actually like physically reading it, and I really enjoyed doing that. I felt like I was able to just immerse myself in the world a lot better, especially because this book is really big, very uncomfortable to hold. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I love the characters. It is similar, if you've read From Blood and Ash, it is similar to Poppy and Cass, the 2 main characters in A Shadow in the Ember, but I personally felt that Sarah, who is the female main character, was a bit more badass. She would do anything she wants, and I was just like, you go off, queen. And then Nyktos, he was just a bit more delicious. The magic system in this book, I felt like it's still confusing to me. I feel like there's a lot of things going on. I'm trying to keep up, but I feel like I need like a drawn out map of everything that's going on in the series. I will say, when I read the ending, like the last chapter in this series had me jaw open. Like I was driving back home and I was just like on the road like, there's no way. I was screaming. It was so good. I love this book so much. I want to read the second one in the series. Honestly, I've kind of given up on From Blood and Ash. Not a fan of that one, but I do want to finish the series, the prequel series for sure, even though I feel like they're probably going to mesh at one point. And then, you guys know what we're gonna do. We're gonna go back to my Kindle because of course, I can only read so many books that are not romances before I'm like, you know what? I think it's time for a romance. So that's exactly what I did. I ended up picking The Fake Out by Stephanie Garber, which is so funny because it is the second book after Behind the Net. And if you remember, I hated Behind the Net. I gave that 2 out of 5 stars, despised it with my being. But I am somebody who, if I see people talking about a book and I see a couple of quotes and I'm like, ooh, I think I might like this. And I don't know, I was just feeling like I want something just not so serious after reading, you know, A Shadow in the Ember, Verity, Kingdom of the Wicked. I was like, I just need something light. So I was like, I'll just pick up this book. We'll see how it goes. Like, I'm not sure it's gonna be that incredible or anything like that. I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thought it was 10 times better. 10 times better. It was so good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the storyline. I loved the characters. I was just so impressed by it. It just felt like a completely different book than Behind the Net, even though it's like in the same series and in the same world. And you see the characters from Behind the Net in this book. And every time I saw them, I was like, please get off my screen. Please get off my page. I do not want to see you right now. Like, you piss me off. Rory and Hazel, our 2 main characters, just had such great chemistry, such great relationships with each other, but also had good relationships on their own. And I think that's what makes a really good romance, is when the characters can have a relationship with people outside of each other. It was just super cute, and I think it moved very beautifully, and I think it's a good romance novel. And then following that, I picked up Hes Not My Type by Megan Quinn, and honestly, I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of scared to pick this book up because the last book I read by Megan Quinn was Untying the Knot, and I absolutely hated it. And Megan Quinn is a hit or miss author for me. Like, some of her books I love, rated 5 stars, some of her books are deadbeats. And happily, this was not a deadbeat. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was so good. This is another hockey romance. I know. It's my favorite type of romances. Like, if it's a hockey romance, 9 out of 10, I'm going to want to read it. It is what it is. It is also the 4th book in her hockey romance series. This is my favorite thus far. I absolutely adored the found family element of this book. That is honestly what made this book such a highly rated book for me, was seeing all of the other hockey players and the players on the team kind of just come together because they know that our main character, he has this crush on this girl. He's had this crush on this girl, but this girl had a boyfriend, and then she broke up with her boyfriend, and they're all trying to like help him be with her and help him like get with her, and it's just so funny and it's so cute. Megan Quinn puts the comedy in a romantic comedy, hands down. This book was hilarious. I laughed. It was so funny. It was so good. It was so sweet. My only, it wasn't really a qualm with the book, but something I noticed in the book was that once these characters like started their sexual relationship, that's all it became. Like, it was like they were going at it like rabbits, and I was like, can we please have a conversation? Like, I understand that we're kind of avoiding our emotions and everything, but I don't think this is healthy. And when they had the conversation, I was like, thank God. Now you can go back to doing what you were doing, but like, let's stop and have a conversation first, okay? Halsey, the male main character, he has just such a layer to him that you really kind of get to peel back in this book, because in the previous books, he's very like stone cold. He doesn't really say anything. He keeps to himself, and you kind of get to peel back those layers in this book. And it was just all around a really great read, and I'm so happy that I read it. All right, friends. We have made it. We have made it to the last book that I read in 2023. I feel like I've been talking forever. Anyways, the last book I read in 2023 was In Ruins by Danielle Pearl. This is a book that my friend Mandy told me to read, and one thing about me is that if my friend tells me to read a book, I will definitely put it at the top of my TBR. It's going to become a priority for me, and I'm so happy that I read this book. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. It follows our two main characters, Tucker and Carly. They were really close friends in childhood, and then they started dating when they were in high school. However, they had a pretty big falling out, and our female main character Carly is kind of the reason for that falling out, and you figure out while you read the book why they broke up and what she actually did to cause the breakup. And it was a bad breakup essentially, and then they meet each other in college, again, their freshman year of college, where they see each other at a party and kind of all of these emotions kind of start coming back up, and they have to kind of be together a lot because not only are they in the same class in college, but they work on the same project. It's forced proximity essentially. Like, they cannot escape each other, even though the male main character Tucker hates Carly. Like, when I tell you that man hates that girl, he hates her. And I personally hated Tucker just as much. I felt like he was disgusting. I felt like he was gross. I felt like he was so aggressively mean. It was like unnecessary at one point. Like, I know what happened. Like, once you figure out what happened and like what she did to cause the breakup, you're like, does this warrant this type of reaction? No, especially because the miscommunication trope is of course sprinkled in there, which we know I love. This book was fun. It was fun, it was dramatic, and like, if you love or remember watching 90210 and you loved watching 90210, you would love this book, because that's how this book felt. I definitely felt like something that took me a while to get used to with this book was that these characters are very young. Like, it is told in past and present tense of both Tucker and Carly, so you can kind of see like their relationship kind of form and like what happened and everything like that. So you are getting high school kids and then freshmen in college, and you can tell the immaturity level and kind of just like how naive they are and just how childish this book feels in a way, which again, I don't read a lot of young adult romances, but it was a little bit too immature at one point for me. I was like, okay, I know we're like 17, 18 years old, but let's grow up a little bit. And honestly, some of the jokes that are thrown around in this book are questionable as well. Didn't love that aspect of it all. There were so many things about this book that I was just like, question mark, question mark, question mark. But I will say the plot was plotting. Like, I was very much intrigued. I loved the drama. I felt like overall, especially the ending, was wild. I was interested, and I was very like interested to like see how the book was going to end and see where these characters were going to go. Like, I started feeling a certain kind of way towards these characters. Also, Carly, get up. Like, at one point I was like, girl, this man hates you. He hates your guts. Why are you still crawling to him? I miss you. I miss you. Stand up. Stand up. Have some self-respect. What is with people not having self-respect when they're being disrespected in relationships? And I know she's like young, I get it. But girl, don't you have friends? She doesn't have friends. That's the problem. She doesn't have friends. I rest my case. I'm sorry. Anyways, I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I was between a 3 and a 4. I couldn't decide, so I just gave it a 3.5. But that's how I felt about it. So these are all the books that I read in 2023, plus the other half that I read on my Kindle on Kindle Unlimited. Again, I would say that 2023 was a pretty good reading year overall. I read some books that were outside of my comfort zone. I started new series. I found some of my new favorite books that I just love so much that are always going to be part of my favorites list whenever I talk about my favorite books that I've ever read, or the books that just make me who I am as a reader. Like, I am so proud of some of the books that I read in 2023, and I'm so excited to kind of embark on new kind of reading projects in the new year. There are so many things I want to read in 2024, and I'm just so excited to do that. Just excited for what 2024 is going to bring. And I'm excited for this channel, and I'm excited to be back and making YouTube videos. I feel like whenever I'm gone for YouTube for longer than a week, I'm like, I think about it. It's in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to make a YouTube video. I need to make a YouTube video. I need to make a YouTube video. So I'm happy to be back making YouTube videos. We're gonna have a lot of fun reading vlogs this year. We are, again, like I said, I have so many fun reading projects that I want to get into this year, so you guys are going to be part of that process as well. In the comments below, let me know what your favorite book was of 2023, and also let me know what book are you most anticipating to read in 2024. It could be a new release or just a book that has been on your shelf or on your TBR for a really long time that you are prioritizing in 2024. Let me know, because I'm curious. I pray that we all reach our reading goals this year, and I pray that we have the best year yet, just in general, in our lives and everything. And I'm wishing you guys such a great 2024. And thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing to my channel if you have subscribed, and engaging and commenting and just being so kind. And I'm excited to see what 2024 will bring us in the new year. Bye!